Hi, welcome to day 4 of How to Surf Life's Biggest Waves. Right now, I'm just taking a moment to reflect on the big waves that have crashed in my life. And I'm sure that you can relate because we're all one. And sometimes those waves just come crashing and they don't seem to let up. The title of this class came from the inspiration of the waves that were hitting California a few weeks ago. I was out walking on the pier in Venice, and I was noticing all the excitement and all the people gathering around to come watch the waves. While I was out there were some surfers that were yelling at other surfers not to go in because the waves were so treacherous. They were so big and they were hitting the top of the pier, or the underneath the pier, but hitting the top of it. And that's pretty rare that happens, but the waves were massive. There are other surfers out there saying, no way, this is like what we live for. We're excited about this. And everyone's like, enter at your own risk. And the surfers that went in were having a blast. I mean, they were getting thrown around and pushed around, and hardly anyone got on their board. I didn't see any amazing surfing, but so many of them were getting in and appearing to have so much fun. And I took some video and was just really watching it, having a good time, just noticing and relating to those waves. Because all of last year in 23, I kept using the metaphor of I feel like the waves of life have been bigger and stronger and pushing me, Candace, around quite a bit. And it feels as if they're not letting up. It just feels like a giant storm, and it's just one wave hitting after another, and I just feel like I'm just getting pushed around. And so I was watching those surfers, and the inspiration came. I had already planned on teaching and talking about the ways to bliss and nirvana, but in that moment, as I was filming some of the waves, the inspiration came of teaching this course, exactly this title, How to Surf Life's Biggest Waves, because I realized that the surfers that were out there were the most seasoned surfers. They weren't new surfers, and the new ones were obviously way too afraid because this was pro level. And I thought about the teachings I want to teach are for people that have probably been on this path quite a while. We know how to surf. We've been through some stuff. If you're listening to this video, I'm sure you've been through some stuff, and I'm sure that you found your way to bliss. You've known peace. But even if you've been on the spiritual path a while, it doesn't exempt you from getting some of life's biggest waves thrown at you. In fact, sometimes the spiritual path invites you into the biggest waves and the biggest hurdles that life can throw. And so I was thinking about that as I was watching these 30-foot waves. The waves got bigger and bigger, and they ended up having to close the pier the next day because the waves were going over the pier. And it was gorgeous and really beautiful to watch. The waves were coming way up on the shore and the beach. Our area didn't get hit, but a lot of California did. It wiped a lot out. And again, all the metaphors in there were just so rich. And so I built this class and this idea around that. After I walked on the pier that day, I took a walk. I was walking my dog, walking around Venice, and the class was developing in my mind. And I could see the whole class and the things I wanted to teach, which I have been teaching. And literally, as I was about to walk back to my home, there were two surfers who had come the corner and walking towards me. And I've seen them several times. I don't know them by name. I don't really know them, but I've seen them several times in the neighborhood. And they were lit up. They were just their energy was huge. And I could just tell that they were just like taking it all in. And so I asked them, I said, hey, did you guys just go surf? And they were like, yeah, it was amazing. And I was like, was it hard? And they're like, oh yeah, it was the hardest we've ever swam. It was the hardest it's ever been out there. But man, was it worth it. It was so good. And they're like, that was extraordinary to surf those big waves. And, you know, they were so thrilled because so few people could do it. And I don't know how many waves they caught, what it was like, but they were so lit up. And it appeared to be a moment that they would probably never forget, because these are historic waves and they got to go out there and do something monumental. And I loved it because it just brought me back into my heart, and it reminded me what this is all about. Why we surf the biggest waves. It's for the thrill of it. We love it. We came to life for the thrill of it. It is so freaking hard to be human sometimes. I mean, that's an understatement. It is treacherous to be human sometimes. And it'll annihilate every part of you at times. But we keep going and we keep going and we keep incarnating and we keep doing this because something in us came for those waves. We came to experience the highs and that exhilaration and the bliss that we get when we catch a wave and we feel one with the ocean and God and our board and our body. We're able to look out at the city, sitting behind the water, look back at the ocean, maybe and swim with dolphins. That moment where we're just one, just in it. It's like the best thing in the world. And for many surfers, that moment is just mere seconds. And they put hours and devotion daily into training to surf those waves. And they only get mere moments and glimpses of those actual waves that they're surfing. The spiritual journey is similar. We put so much work into this, and we can make it last, but sometimes that blissful moment is only for a mere moment. It's only, this, and we can't hold on to it. We have to let it go. It collapses because now we gotta go do something, or someone's crying and needs us, or time to get gas, or, do something at work. But those moments where we can sit back and just be are everything. But how do we get to those moments? How do we deal with the setbacks? How do we deal when the moments where the waves are just toppling over us? When we feel like we're losing our breath? When we feel like we're about to drown, when the riptide pulls us back and we're not able to catch ourselves. The moments when we're going through an existential crisis and nothing in our life makes sense. When our heart is broken, when we're so lonely, when we're bankrupt, emotionally, financially, spiritually. When everything's crashing, a car accident, a hospital bill, a diagnosis, a death. These moments that everything comes pounding. What do we do with them? What do we do with life's biggest setbacks? And how do we get up from them? That's what today's message is about. Today's message is called the Divine Setback. Today I'm doing things a little different. I gave a long introduction. And the last 3 classes I've started with self-inquiry, which we'll get to. But I wanted to get right into it because I think anyone watching, and for myself today, myself as in Candace, I've been going through setbacks. It's been a string of setbacks. And I almost didn't give this message, and yet I realized that this was the message I made the whole class about, and this was an important one. And this message is just as much for you as it is for me. Setbacks, especially those unexpected ones, the ones where you're doing so much work to get on your feet and you feel like you're a good person and you feel like you've been devoted to God and you feel like you've done everything right and you've had a positive mind, and yet the tower still crashes. Those are some of the hardest ones. At least they have been for me. And I went through a major tower moment last year. It's the tower in the tarot. The tower is an extraordinary moment that we all go through. And sometimes we go through multiple towers in our lives. And sometimes there's just this one really big tower. And it's an inevitable part of the spiritual journey. And it's one of the greatest gifts. It's a very transformative moment. And maybe it's not just one moment, and sometimes it is just this one huge moment. It's funny, I was just telling a story on one of my other videos, I think it was day 2, how everything was connected for me and how I went through a mini tower moment, which just happened to be right after 9/11, 2001. Literally the tower fell, out here in the collective, but it also fell in my own personal life and was the beginning of the spiritual journey. It was the beginning of the unwinding of things and the interconnections. You can hear more of that story, I believe it's in day 2. But to bring it back right now, the tower has to fall. It's everything we built ourselves upon. It's our beliefs and our structures and our ideas about who we are in relationship to this world, in relationship to God. And often the tower comes in the form of a car accident or diagnosis or financial loss or a COVID shutdown or, all sorts of different things. It can happen in a zillion different ways: a breakup, a divorce, a death, something catastrophic. And sometimes it's just something small that just tips us over. But the tower fall, these setbacks usually bring us to our knees. We built this whole idea about what our life is supposed to be like. We were trying to be a good person. We were doing everything right. We had built this identity for ourselves. We believed ourselves probably to be separate of God. Even if we pray to God, there was often this moment where we thought we were separate of God and didn't fully know our divinity. And maybe we do, but it hits different. But the tower indicates a moment where everything that you thought your life was built on needed to break open. Like the Tower of Babel, it splits everything into multiplicity, and it creates so much divide in your life for you to have to pick up the pieces and often throw a lot of it out, compost it, recycle it, and start over. It's a change of direction. It's a moment where you have no ability to control life as you know it. The setback is so great that you really cannot be the person you were before the moment it happened. It forces relationships, diet, work, relationships. Anything. The way that you've lived your life has to change. It breaks everything open, and it's often disastrous and treacherous. It's often bloody and messy and guts, and it spills over into other people being angry. And all of this is divine. It's perfect. This is intended to go this way. Every great movie has a tower moment. It's the hero's journey. It's in the hero's journey of the tarot cards. And we go through these in order to spiritually awaken. That's the ultimate reason we go through these moments, is because everything is constantly trying to point us back to our divinity. And it's saying, hey, you built your life on the idea that you're something different than what you really are. And so I'm going to knock everything you're attached to and all these egoic beliefs about yourself. I'm going to let it crumble. That's what life does. That's what the waves were doing. They were letting a lot of things that needed to be cleaned out in the ocean. It dismantles things, it breaks things apart, and it doesn't care what's in its way. That's what a good hurricane does, a tornado. Nature doesn't care. Anything that's in its way, it's like it's coming down. And that's what the waves of life are doing. It's like, I don't care if your heart's broken. I don't care if you look humiliated. I don't care if you can't pay your bills right now. I don't care if you feel super low and sad. We are going to crush this and break this down, this idea that you are separate of God, this idea that you are less than holy. We're going to break it down and muddle everything apart in order for you to see your divinity, your oneness, your connection, to put your entire life and all eyes on one, to bring you to your knees and to get you to see the greatest truth of your life. That your life really is no life, it's actually divine. There is no life, there is no death. You are divine. These holy, holy moments are to get you to see the eyes of truth, the one being that you really are, interconnected to all things, everyone. As soon as you start to realize this, your setback becomes a divine setback. When you start to agree and say, yes, on some level, I needed this to happen and I wanted it to happen. And the higher truth in me knows this was meant to happen. As soon as you start agreeing with these setbacks, the tower falls, these catastrophes, these losses, and you say, I agree with it, and you stop having resistance with it and stop feeling like a victim to it and start saying, I am one with all, I am one with God, and I choose this as if I wrote it into the script. It becomes a divine setback. And all of a sudden, all the resistance and all the separation between you and it and God start becoming one. And this is when the tower starts cleaning up and rebuilding into a temple of God. This is when you rebuild on truth instead of sand. This is when you rebuild from a place of wholeness and eternal bliss rather than the dualistic nature of life and death, where it's constantly in motion, in change, and constantly in survival of death and destruction. You no longer build your life on the ego, but you rebuild from the truth of the eternal I am. When you build your life on I am one with all. I am. Nothing can hurt you ever again. Your body might die, but you know the ultimate truth. You are imperishable. You are eternal. You neither were born or you die. You become the witnesser of the life through the body and the vessel that you live. But you know that you can't die. So these tower moments collapse, and they crumble the sense of self that we thought we were, so that we can rebuild into truth. This is in the Bible. Jesus says, do not build your house on sand. Build it on the rock of God. And that's what this is about. You will never find security in this world, in this dream, in this Maya, because it's not real and is subject to death. Everything in this material world will eventually perish. Everything has an expiration date on it. Anything created can be destroyed, but not God. So when you're going through any sort of catastrophe, it's an invitation to start looking up and inward. When you feel like life has painted you in a corner, or you feel like you're up against a mountain that's bigger than you look up, you look in, you look at God. You decide to surrender to I am. I am. One of the most amazing things that happens after divine setbacks, after we've been pulled back to our threshold, we've been pushed to our breaking point as a human. We feel like we're nearly going to die or might even end it for ourselves. We're just so at the breaking point. When we get to these moments that we feel pushed and thrashed and compounded, and at the very end of our rope, we feel like, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I don't know if I have one more breath. I don't know if I have one more dollar. I don't know if I have any more in me. Just one more minute at a time. Just one more moment at a time. But there's usually something very holy that happens when we get to these 11th hour, 11:59 moments in our life. You can never plan these things. This is where the supreme knowledge of God comes in. These holy moments when you feel like, I cannot even see a way out, but I'm going to keep my eyes on God. I've made this a divine setback. I agree with it. I accept it. And now I just don't know. I surrender all. Often there's this point of no return where God sets you free and the miracles and magic of life start coming in. And it's these holy moments. Some call it quantum leap. But it's these moments where you can't plan it, but all of a sudden the floodgates and miracles and health and money and everything comes together for you. Everything just comes in like a tidal wave, allowing you to go farther beyond what you could have done for yourself because you've completely given yourself over to God. I've had a few of these happen in my life where I saw no way out, but I just gave it to God. It's at those final moments. Literally, one time I was literally supposed to be on a plane to Africa, and the flight was leaving that afternoon, and I still did not have a ticket. I was doing mission work, and wouldn't you know it, it was my life stream to go. I wanted to go. I prayed. I gave it to God, everything. I wanted to go so bad. And wouldn't you know it, the day that we were supposed to leave that morning, I'm crying because we still didn't have enough money to get my ticket as a team. And I just kept giving it to God. I'm like, God, I'm yours. This whole thing is about you. And just as everyone was literally getting in the van to go to the airport, there was an announcement that they had to cancel the flight. And I felt so relieved because I was like, I know I'm supposed to go. I have to be there. And it's irritating me that the money's still not there for me. And the flight was canceled and it was rescheduled for like 3 or 4 more days later. And I was like, oh my God, this is a divine miracle. This is a divine setback, but there's something. I didn't call it that, but I just knew. I was like, this is an opportunity God's given me to go. And in that amount of time, I forced my team. I'm like, we are going to raise the money. I belong there. I need to go. And they literally got my ticket the morning that we actually went. And it was an amazing thing. I mean, and I was meant to be there. That trip was a life-changing trip. I was spent 2 months in Tanzania. But that was just one of the many, many miracles that I've had where I was pushed to the very edge and didn't know how I'd come up with the money. I didn't know how things were going to look just moments later. But I just kept all eyes on God. I just totally trusted and handed myself over, surrendered. I am. My ego's out of it and I surrender my will to you, God. All eyes on you. I am one with you. Whatever will be, and I accept that. I love what is. To get through life's hardest moments, it requires us to humble ourselves and to surrender. The greatest thing is the body can perish, but the spirit never will. Therefore, we can never really drown. When those waves come crashing, surrender to it. Let it carry you. Maybe it's not time to get on that board right now. Instead, it's carrying you over to swim, or it's pushing you to the shore to take a break. It's asking you to rest. It's asking you to collect yourself and just take a moment. Maybe it's pushing you to the rocks and saying, get up, just take a breath right now. You'll get back on your board in a little bit. You'll create something beautiful with me in a little bit. We'll ride those waves soon, but right now take a break. Turn off your phone, take a break from the people. Maybe it's time to take a walk. Maybe it's time to really take care of yourself and get air back in your lungs. Maybe you need a good long nap. Take a season off and just relax. Maybe it's time to get some babysitters and ask for help and take good care of yourself right now. Been through a lot. Come back when those waves have settled down, and I guarantee you're going to ride those waves. Sometimes life is saying, quit doing more. It's actually time to do less. One way to not get so lost is to do self-inquiry when we're going through those challenges. and ask, who feels challenged right now? You might say, I do. Well, who is I? It's a thought, it's a title. Well, what's a thought or a title? A word? Well, what's a word? Energy? What's energy? When you get to that point where you can't really answer, you found yourself. So when you're going through those waves, you can ask yourself, who's going through this? And when you get into that spaciousness, you remember that spaciousness, that I am, that divinity. You can handle anything. You can handle anything. Because it can't die. And so one way to get through anything is to abide in the self, to do the self-inquiry, or to do the affirmations of I am, to come back to that silence and that stillness, to this moment, and to not get ahead, but to get into this moment and just take life one moment at a time, just right now. Like, well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pay my bills just right now. I don't know if I'm going to be able to blah, 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 just right now. Who is it that's worried about that? Me. Who is me? You just sit with that, and you just surrender to that. You just let life start carrying you. You surrender to the flow instead of forcing yourself so hard to swim in one direction. Remember that tower is often a change of directions, and it's asking us, well, maybe it's carrying you another direction. Maybe the tidal waves and the tide, not the tidal waves, the tide is asking you to go over here now. And it's like, you know what? There's actually something quite beautiful over here that you can't see. But just trust me on this one. And it'll go a lot smoother if you let go. I'll push you. But you can't grip so hard. You need to let go and just let me push you now. So just relax. Take one moment at a time. Take more naps. Fill your head with stuff that keeps you, high and informed and in peace. And relax right now, because I'm going to carry you to a new life. That life you just had, that was nice. That was good. There was a lot of sweetness in it, but boy, was that a heavy load for you. Now I'm going to take you over here. We're going to do this together. You and I as one. You living through me as spirit. We're going to do this together now, so you're not doing this all on your own, thinking that you're separate from me. Now we're going to do life in divine order and allow the flow to take us, you abiding in the self as I. You're going to find that there's a lot of magic over here. There's some seashells and starfish and a whole lot of beautiful things over here waiting for you. And you're going to get to surf again, just in a whole new realm. So trust me on that. Meanwhile, just take a deep breath right now. Just be right here. Let yourself collect after everything's crumbled. You don't need to jump into another relationship. You don't need to call those people back just yet. You don't need to explain yourself to everybody. You don't need to start teaching just yet. You don't need to go buy another home or race to rebuild right now. Just let the dust settle. The tower just fell, so easy does it. We're going to rebuild from a new awareness. When you get into these silent moments with God, with the self, the true self, you'll know the next step. And then you'll know the next step. And then you'll know the next step. So it's important to take a lot of time to get silent, to get still, and to watch anything that's coming up. You can take the fears, and you can take all the worries, all the guilt, shame, anything you're going through, you can bring it up. You can transmute it while you're going through these processes, and you can bring it up, bring it into your heart space, bring it into I am, and just watch those feelings melt. Just constantly take time to be silent and just watch the self wanting to hold on and grip, wanting to rebuild, wanting to hold on to what's happened, wanting to feel all the feelings. Just watch it, invite it in, love it. And as you do this, a lot of those sensations and the things you've gone through are going to start melting away, and it's going to start clearing. It's going to start energizing. But you can only do this by being still, by abiding in the self. And when you do that, you'll literally know the next step and the next step, because you're going to be one with God, guided. And so it becomes a practice of making time to really do the self-inquiry and the work to abide in the self. And that was the whole point of the tower and the waves crashing, was to start living in this divine harmony with God, being guided step by step, living life in harmony more than ever. You may have been doing that, but this is a divine union where it becomes even more synchronistic and more attuned to the highest order. It becomes a dance, a very beautiful dance. And some people out here may not understand it. And that's when you have to listen to the self to know how to handle those situations. Because people are often used to you operating on logic and being spontaneous or fast or doing things the way you used to do it. And this is the whole reason for the change, is to not go back to habitual living and doing things the way that it had always been done, but to live in harmony with God and to start living in the flow of what your spirit is asking of you. And so it's going to look different. And that could be part of the losses, is the relationships may not always understand. And that too, you will be able to navigate and be able to find love for and acceptance for as you abide in the self. You'll find ways to not take what other people do personal, or what they say and the criticism they have about your new way of living in harmony with God. You'll find ways in the presence of God how to handle that. So just come to your heart, come to the silence, and you'll always know the way for that moment. I am that. I am. And so are you, because together we're one. You can handle anything through God. Peace be with you.